$4.8 billion. That's what Donald Trump owed to Russian state banks, hidden beneath layers of shell companies and fraudulent loans. 4.8 billion reasons why 280,000 American retirees would lose everything they'd saved. Maria Volov, a mid-level accountant at Deutsche Bank's Moscow branch, had tried to warn them. She'd sent 10,000 pages of evidence to a freshman congresswoman from Texas before disappearing into the Witness Protection Program. Now, in a Fox News studio in Manhattan, that congresswoman was about to detonate a financial bomb that would make Enron look like a pickpocket's fumble. The President of the United States had no idea that his empire would crumble in exactly 67 minutes. The irony was exquisite, destroyed not by his enemies at CNN or MSNBC, but live on his favorite network, in front of his favorite audience, by a woman he'd dismissed as probably the dumbest person in Congress. The Fox News building on 6th Avenue hummed with controlled chaos. In Studio F, two podiums stood 12 feet apart beneath lights that would soon capture the most catastrophic political interview in American history. Maria Bartiromo reviewed her notes, feeling the electric charge that precedes either triumph or disaster. Her producer's voice crackled, 10 minutes to air. The president is in position. Crockett just arrived with two assistants wheeling in boxes of documents. In the green room, Donald Trump paced like a caged predator. His navy suit strained as he gestured wildly to his entourage. This Crockett woman, she's nothing. First term nobody from Texas. He jabbed the air with his finger. I've been making deals since before she was born. Beautiful deals. The best deals. His chief of staff held up a briefing folder. Sir, the talking points. I don't need talking points. Trump's face flushed beneath the makeup. I know more about economics than any economist. We have the greatest economy ever. Period. 3 floors up, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett sat in perfect stillness before documents arranged with military precision. At the center lay a USB drive containing Maria Volkov's files, evidence that would end a presidency. Her chief of staff, Marcus Chen, paced behind her. You sure about this? She touched the drive gently. Marcus, 280,000 American retirees have their life savings invested in Trump luxury properties. What they actually own is debt to the Russian mob. She stood, smoothing her charcoal suit. Better a controlled crash than a Russian oligarch owning half of Miami. 2 minutes. Trump strutted onto the stage with his signature forward lean, basking in applause like a lizard on a warm rock. Bartiromo took her position. Good evening. I'm Maria Bartiromo, and welcome to this special Fox News Town Hall, Foreign Investment, Opportunity or Threat. Here to discuss his administration's policies, the 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, and representing an alternative perspective, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, Democrat from Texas's 30th District. Crockett entered, wheeling a single-file box, moving with the controlled grace of a prosecutor entering court with an airtight case. As she took her position, Trump looked her up and down with undisguised condescension. Congresswoman, he said, voice dripping disdain. So nice of you to join us, though I'm not sure why we need a freshman representative here. I've been making deals since before you were born. Crockett placed the box at her feet and looked directly at him. Something in her gaze made Trump's smirk falter. Mr. President, she said quietly, I'm not here to discuss your deals. I'm here to discuss your debts. Debts. Trump's voice cracked slightly on the word, then recovered with bluster. I don't have debts. I have investments. Leveraged investments. It's called being smart. It's called business. Something you wouldn't understand, having spent your whole life in government. Bartiromo intervened with practiced smoothness. Let's begin with the basics. Mr. President, your administration has encouraged foreign investment in American real estate. Can you explain why this benefits American workers? Trump's hands rose like twin birds taking flight, already sculpting success from thin air. Foreign investment is beautiful. The most beautiful thing. You know what it does. It creates jobs. Thousands of jobs. Millions of jobs. When someone from China or Saudi Arabia or wherever buys a Trump property, I mean, any American property, that money goes right into the economy, right into the pockets of American workers. He was finding his rhythm now, the familiar patter of the salesman who believes his own pitch. I've brought in billions, billions with a B, in foreign investment. The Trump Organization alone has created more jobs than any company in history, more than Ford, more than Apple. Tim Cook called me the other day. He said, "Sir, how do you do it? How do you create so many jobs?" I said, "Tim, it's easy when you're a genius." Crockett made a single note on her legal pad. From his angle, Trump couldn't see what she wrote, but the camera behind her caught it clearly. Let him dig. The Trump Organization, Trump continued, building steam like a runaway locomotive, is the most successful real estate company in the world. We have properties everywhere. The best properties. And yes, we work with international partners. The best partners, very wealthy, very smart. They see America as a land of opportunity, and they're right. Congresswoman Crockett, Bartiromo turned to her. Your response to the president's position on foreign investment? Crockett looked up from her notes with the calm focus of a sniper adjusting her scope. Thank you, Maria. I agree with the president that foreign investment can benefit America when it's transparent, legal, and doesn't compromise our national security. But that's not what we're discussing tonight. She reached into the box and withdrew a bound document thick as a phone book. The camera zoomed in as she placed it carefully on her podium. Mr. President, you just mentioned your international partners. Let's talk about one in particular. Are you familiar with VEB? Trump's left eye twitched so slightly that only the high-definition cameras caught it. Never heard of them. Is that some kind of internet thing, like the Facebook? It's Bank, Crockett said, pronouncing the Russian name flawlessly. The Russian State Development Bank. It's controlled directly by Vladimir Putin. And according to these documents, she patted the folder, VEB has loaned the Trump Organization $4.8 billion over the past 15 years. Ah, fake news. The words exploded from Trump like a geyser. Completely fake. I don't borrow from Russia. I've never borrowed from Russia. I don't even like Russia. Too cold. Crockett opened the folder with the reverence of a scholar handling ancient texts. Page 1, a loan agreement dated March 15, 2011. $500 million from VEB to Trump International Holdings LLC, signed by you personally. Would you like to see your signature? She held up the document. The camera zoomed in on the distinctive angular scrawl that had appeared on everything from presidential pardons to supermarket tabloids. That could be anyone's signature. Probably forged. The Democrats are very good at forging. Very good. They forged Obama's birth certificate. I mean, they could have. This is probably the same thing. Page 47. Crockett continued, her fingers finding the marked section with the practiced ease of a pianist locating middle C. The paper crackled as she turned it, the sound somehow ominous in the studio's acoustical perfection. Another loan, July 2013, $750 million for Trump Tower Moscow, a project you claimed under oath to Congress never existed. It didn't exist. Trump's voice cracked like a whip. But there was something beneath the bluster now, a tremor of genuine fear. It was just an idea, a concept, like a dream, but for buildings. In the second row, a woman wearing a faded teacher's union pin pressed her hand to her chest as if checking that her heart still beat. The camera, with the uncanny instinct of experienced operators, found her face at the exact moment comprehension dawned, that peculiar expression humans wear when they realize they've been passengers on a ship that's already struck the iceberg. Her whispered, "Oh God," carried in the studio's perfect acoustics, reaching the boom microphones like a prayer for the already damned. A dream that required $750 million in Russian state financing. Crockett's voice maintained its prosecutorial calm, but her hands betrayed her. They gripped the podium edges with enough force to whiten her knuckles. She pulled out a new folder, this one marked with red tabs that looked like drops of blood against the manila. Let's discuss how these loans were hidden from American regulators. Deutsche Bank's Private Wealth Management Unit, Moscow branch. Tell me, Mr. President, are you familiar with the practice called mirror trading? Trump's makeup, that careful orange armor applied by professionals just an hour ago, was now fighting a losing battle against basic biology. Beads of sweat had begun their inevitable march from his hairline, creating tiny rivers that carved through foundation like water through sandstone. The studio lights, normally a politician's friend, had become interrogation lamps. I don't know about any trading. The words burst from him like steam from a pressure valve. I'm not a trader. I'm a builder. The best builder. I build things. Beautiful things. The audience had gone cemetery quiet. In the third row, the CEO of a major hedge fund was typing frantically on his phone. Several others were doing the same. They knew what pledging American real estate to Russian banks meant. They were already calculating their exposure. But here's where it gets interesting, Crockett said, pulling out a new set of documents. These loans weren't made directly. They went through Deutsche Bank's Moscow branch. Deutsche Bank would loan money to Trump properties, and simultaneously, on the same day, sometimes at the same hour, VEB would deposit exactly that amount into Deutsche Bank Moscow. It's called mirror trading, Mr. President. It's how you launder money when you want to hide the real source. I don't know anything about that. Trump's voice climbed higher. His face now the color of a warning light. Deutsche Bank is a legitimate bank. The most legitimate. They love me there. I'm their favorite customer. Crockett corrected gently. You were their favorite customer until last month, when Maria Volov, a senior analyst in their Moscow office, provided these records to federal investigators. She pulled out an iPad, swiping to a specific page. This is an internal Deutsche Bank email from January 3, 2018, from Thomas Bowers, head of their private wealth division, to the CEO. Quote, the Trump relationship has become untenable. The source of funds from Moscow cannot be verified. Recommend immediate cessation of all new lending. Unquote. Bowers killed himself, Trump blurted out, then seemed to realize what he'd said. I mean, he died. Very sad. Heart attack, I think, or something. He hanged himself in his Malibu home, Crockett said quietly, 3 days before he was scheduled to testify to Congress about the Trump loans. His family says he was receiving death threats. Nothing to do with me. I send my best wishes to his family. Lovely family. I barely knew the men. Crockett pulled out another folder, this one marked with red tabs. Let's talk about what this money was used for, Mr. President. Because it wasn't just for buildings, was it? She opened to a spreadsheet that looked like a fever dream of numbers and names. Between 2011 and 2019, the Trump Organization purchased 147 properties in the United States. But here's what's curious, they were all purchased by shell companies registered in Cyprus, companies with names like Apex Holdings Limited and Pinnacle Investments Limited. Very creative naming. Standard business practice. Everyone uses shell companies, for liability, for taxes. Very legal. Very cool. Legal, perhaps, but interesting who actually owns these shells. She flipped to another page. Every single one traces back to Russian nationals, oligarchs, to be specific. Men like Arisa Galarov, Dmitry Rybolovlev, Igor Sekin. Some are under federal sanctions, but they all have one thing in common, they paid far above market value for Trump properties. She pulled out a photograph of a Miami penthouse. This unit in Trump Tower, Miami, market value $5 million, sold to a Cyprus shell company tied to Rybolovlev for $15 million. That's a $10 million gift, Mr. President, multiplied by 147 properties. The hedge fund CEO in the third row stood up abruptly and walked out, his face pale. 2 others followed. They'd done the math. If Trump's empire was built on Russian money laundering, every American institution that had invested in Trump properties was potentially complicit. But we're not done, Crockett said, her voice taking on an edge of steel. Because this isn't just about money laundering. It's about the 280,000 Americans whose retirement funds are invested in Trump REIT. She pulled out the final weapon in her arsenal, a thick prospectus marked with the Trump logo. Trump Real Estate Investment Trust, launched in 2021. Marketed to pension funds as the safest investment in America, police pensions, teacher retirements, firefighter funds, small investors who believed they were buying into American success. She opened to a page covered in yellow highlighter. But buried on page 247 of the prospectus, in font so small you need a magnifying glass, is this disclosure: certain properties held by the trust may be subject to international financing arrangements. So what? Boilerplate. Every prospectus has boilerplate. Mr. President, do those 280,000 Americans know that their retirement funds are collateral for your Russian loans? The silence that followed was absolute. Trump's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. His hands, usually in constant motion, hung frozen at his sides. The camera caught every second of it, the moment a conman realized the mark had been playing him all along. "I'll ask again," Crockett said. "When VEB calls in that $4.8 billion, and according to these documents, they can call it in at any time, what happens to those pension funds?" Trump's mouth moved soundlessly. 5 seconds, 10, 20. The studio's digital clock, visible in the corner of the screen, counted out each second with pitiless precision. "Mr. President," Bartiromo prompted, her journalistic instincts overcoming her network loyalty, "can you answer the Congresswoman's question?" 30 seconds, 40. The sweat on Trump's forehead had broken through the makeup barrier, creating orange rivulets that traced down his cheeks like rusty tears. His hands gripped the podium as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. At 53 seconds, a strangled sound emerged from his throat, half word, half whimper. "The loans are structured instruments, very complex. They're quite simple, actually," Crockett said. "If you default, Russia owns the buildings, and the pension funds own nothing. It's the largest theft in American history, and you've already committed it. The only question is when the bill comes due." 60 seconds, 65, 66. At 67 seconds, Trump's paralysis broke like a dam bursting. "This is a setup," he screamed, his voice cracking like a teenager's. "A witch hunt. You're working with the deep state, with Hillary, with Obama, with the ghost of John McCain." He lurched away from the podium, forgetting his microphone was attached. The wire went taut, yanking him back. He spun, arms flailing, and knocked over his water glass. It shattered on the floor with a sound like breaking bones. I have to," he was pulling at the microphone, trying to unhook it from his lapel. "This is illegal. You can't just, those documents are stolen. Fruit of the poisonous tree. Every document I've shown tonight is either public record or provided by whistleblowers in accordance with federal law," Crockett said calmly. "Mr. President, would you like to continue the discussion, or would you prefer to consult with your attorneys?" "My attorneys will destroy you." Trump screamed, finally freeing himself from the microphone. It fell to the floor with a feedback shriek that made the audience wince. "You'll be in jail. Your whole family in jail. Your dog's in jail." He stumbled toward the exit, his long tie flapping behind him like a flag of surrender. At the door, he turned back, his face a mask of rage and terror. "This isn't over. I'll tweet you to death. I'll truth social you into oblivion. I'll. The door slammed. The echo reverberated through the studio like the last beat of a dying heart. For 5 full seconds, no one moved. No one breathed. The audience sat frozen, witnesses to history who couldn't quite process what they'd seen. In living rooms across America, 43 million viewers leaned forward, waiting. Bartiromo touched her earpiece, listening to the chaos in the control room. Her producer was screaming something about ratings and history and, Holy Mary, Mother of God, did that just happen? She took a breath, found her professional composure, and turned to the camera. "Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States has left our town hall. We still have 23 minutes of scheduled time. Congresswoman Crockett, would you like to continue?" Crockett stood alone at her podium, a lighthouse keeper tending her signal while the storm raged around her. The abandoned microphone at Trump's position continued its electronic death rattle, intermittent bursts of static that sounded like whispered secrets trying to escape. The audience was no longer the polite assembly of business leaders who had filed in 45 minutes ago. They had transformed into something primal, something democratic in its purest form, citizens discovering they'd been robbed and demanding answers with the fury of the newly awakened. "My fellow Americans," she began, her voice carrying the particular resonance of someone who understood that history would replay these words for decades. But her carefully modulated tone was immediately swallowed by the chaos erupting before her. "My pension is in that REIT." A man in the third row had shot to his feet. His Retired Police Officers Association jacket caught the light as he trembled with rage. 30 years of walking beats in Chicago. 30 years of contributing to my retirement. 30 years of believing in the American promise. All of it now revealed as collateral for a con man's debts. Are you telling me Vladimir Putin owns my retirement? I'm telling you, Crockett replied, her voice cutting through the pandemonium with surgical precision, to look at page 247 of your prospectus. The disclosure exists, buried in language so deliberately opaque it might as well be encrypted. She held up the document, its pages dense with text so small it looked like an array of black static on white. International financing arrangements subject to foreign sovereignty requirements. That's legalese for, Russian oligarchs hold your future hostage. English. The shout came from somewhere in the back, followed by a chorus of agreement. Speak English. Crockett set down the prospectus with the care of someone handling evidence at a crime scene. The cameras tracked her movement as she pulled out a new chart, this one deliberately simple, designed for maximum impact rather than legal completeness. All right, let me translate from lawyer to human. Donald Trump borrowed $4.8 billion from Russian banks controlled by Vladimir Putin. When he couldn't pay, and he knew he couldn't pay, he used your retirement funds as collateral. Every pension invested in Trump REIT is now backing Russian loans. The hedge fund manager in the designer suit, the one who'd been texting frantically since Crockett first mentioned VEB, was now standing on his chair, screaming into two phones simultaneously. His face the color of fresh blood. His words came in staccato bursts of financial jargon, liquidate everything. Yes, everything. I don't care about the penalties. Get us out now. A teacher near the front, she couldn't have been more than 30, probably contributing to her retirement for less than a decade, had begun to cry. Not the dignified tears of televised tragedy, but the ugly, body-shaking sobs of someone watching their future evaporate. The boom operator, breaking every rule of production, swung his equipment to capture her breakdown, understanding instinctively that this was the story, not the financial mechanics, but the human wreckage. How is this legal? The woman asking looked like she'd stepped out of a corporate boardroom, Armani suit, pearls that cost more than most cars, the kind of careful composure that suggested decades of navigating male-dominated spaces. But now that composure was cracking like ice in spring. How can he use our money as collateral without explicit consent? That's theft. That's theft. He did tell you. Crockett's response was gentle but implacable, the voice of a doctor delivering a terminal diagnosis. Page 247, subsection 3b, paragraph 4, in 6-point Helvetica font. Your fund manager signed off on it. The question you should be asking is, did they understand what they were signing, or did they not care as long as the fees kept flowing? The studio had devolved into something between a town hall and a riot. Fox News producers were gesturing frantically at Bartiromo, their usual hand signals replaced by full-body pantomimes of panic. Cut to commercial. Keep rolling. Call security. The director, a veteran of 30 years who'd covered wars and natural disasters, made the call that would define his career: stay live. This is history. Bartiromo, her legendary composure finally showing cracks like stress fractures in steel, attempted to restore order. Please, everyone, we need to. Congresswoman, can you explain what happens next? What recourse do these people have? Crockett looked directly into the center camera, knowing that somewhere beyond that lens sat living rooms full of retirees just now understanding that their golden years had been mortgaged to Moscow. What happens next depends entirely on what you do in the next 72 hours. Every person watching this, every person with $1 in that REIT, every person who's ever believed that in America theft has consequences regardless of who commits it. Her phone buzzed on the podium, not the subtle vibration of a text, but the insistent pulse of an incoming call. She glanced at the screen, and her entire demeanor shifted. The prosecutorial mask slipped for just a moment, replaced by something raw, more human. I'm sorry. I need to. She looked at Bartiromo, then at the audience, some of whom were now standing on their chairs to see better. This is Maria Volov, the woman who risked everything to warn you. She's calling from protective custody, and she wants to address the investors directly. The studio fell silent with the abruptness of a conductor's baton dropping. Even the hedge fund manager lowered his phones. The crying teacher wiped her face with her sleeve. 300 people in the studio and 43 million watching at home held their collective breath as Crockett pressed speaker and held her phone to the microphone. Hello, can you hear me? The voice that emerged was accented but clear, carrying the particular timbre of someone who'd been crying but was determined to speak nonetheless. My name is Maria Volov. For 15 years, I worked in Deutsche Bank Moscow office. I am, I was senior analyst in private wealth management division. She paused, and in that pause you could hear the weight of a life destroyed for conscience. When she continued, her voice carried the exhaustion of someone who'd been running for 6 months and had finally decided to stop and fight. I processed these loans, everyone. I created spreadsheets showing how money moved from Russian state banks through Deutsche Bank to Trump Organization. I marked accounts that were, how you say, red flags, suspicious, but my supervisors, they said, keep quiet. Is just business. Is how things work. Another pause. Someone in the studio whispered, Jesus Christ, and the boom mics caught it, broadcasting the profanity to millions. 6 months ago, they asked me to change numbers, to make 4 billion in Russian loans disappear from records, to create false documents showing money came from legitimate places. I said no. They said I would be fired. I said, fire me. They said worse things would happen. I believed them. Crockett held the phone steady, but the cameras caught the tremor in her hands. This wasn't part of the plan. Volov was supposed to be in hiding, unreachable, safe. The fact that she was calling now, live on air, suggested something had changed, something had forced her hand. I want to speak to the Americans whose retirements are now Russian property. The teachers, the police, the firefighters. You do not know me, but I know you. I saw your pension fund numbers in our systems. I saw how Trump Organization used your money as poker chips in a game you never agreed to play. I could have stayed silent, kept my job, kept my life, but I have daughters, 12 and 14 years. I want them to grow up in a world where truth matters more than money. Her voice broke on the last word, but she pushed through. The documents are real. Every page, every number, every signature. Your president owes Russian government $4.8 billion. When he cannot pay, and he cannot pay, they will take collateral. Your retirements, your futures, your American dream becomes Russian property. Someone in the audience shouted, when will they call in the loans? Volov heard the question through the phone. Her answer was like a judge passing sentence. The loans are already overdue by 6 months. Putin has been waiting, for what? I do not know. But Russian banks do not forgive debts. They collect. Always. The line crackled with static, the sound of distance and danger. I must go now, but please listen to Congresswoman Crockett. She has all documents. She has proof. Do not let them tell you this is fake news or witch hunt. I have given up everything, my career, my country, my safety, to warn you. Please do not let it be for nothing. The line went dead with the finality of a funeral bell. In the studio, in living rooms across America, in bars and break rooms where people had gathered to watch what they thought would be another boring policy discussion, the silence stretched like a wound. Crockett placed her phone back on the podium with the care of someone handling a holy relic. When she spoke again, her voice carried a new urgency, as if Volov's courage had transferred through the digital connection. You heard her, a woman who gave up everything to warn strangers on another continent. The question now is simple: what are you willing to do to save your own futures? The audience erupted again, but this time with purpose rather than panic. A man in a plumber's union jacket was already on his phone to his union rep. The teacher who'd been crying had pulled out a legal pad and was furiously taking notes. The hedge fund manager had given up on selling and was now calculating exposure, his fingers